G'day. Welcome to the AgriCoach podcast for families on the land who want to grow their family's wealth and prosperity across the generations. I'm your host, Ben Law, and I'm the financial bloke. G'day, everyone. Welcome back to the AgriCoach Wealth and Wisdom podcast. I'm Ben Law, and I'm the financial bloke. Today, we have one of my favourite people from one of my favourite families, Lynise Conaghan of Barmount Station. It's taken a little bit of persuading to get Lynise on the podcast, but in typical Conaghan fashion, she stepped up and agreed to be here today, which I'm eternally grateful for. We're going to get to know the Conaghan family, a multi-generational farming family who are all driven, resilient, determined, but above all, deeply committed to each other. The Conaghan family consists of Phil and Lynise, the current generation leading the charge, and Andrew, Regan, and Tess, the next generation stepping up to take their family business to the next level. They have one grandson, Lane, and he's the fifth generation on Barmount. The Conaghans are no stranger to the challenges and complexities of a family running a 10,000 head feedlot, supported by a cropping operation and a software company. Yep, you heard it right, a software company. But what really sets them apart is their willingness to tackle any challenge head on. They've embarked on a journey to not only be successful in business, but also to become what I call a high-performing family. Now, a high-performing family are characterised by being aligned to their vision, united in their purpose, and determined to create strong family relationships, and hence a legacy of family prosperity for generations to come. Whether you're a farming family looking to navigate your own challenges in a family business, or simply inspired by stories of growth and transformation, this episode is packed with insights you won't want to miss. So without further delay, I want to welcome Lynise Conaghan.
Thanks, Ben.
Now, Lynise, it's taken a bit for me to get you on here, hasn't it? I think this is going to be amazing. Are you ready for a great podcast today?
Yep, let's do it.
Righto. So, Lynise, 2024 was an absolute cracker of a year for the Conaghan family. And I went through the other day and you and I listed it. The first thing was, it was the 75th anniversary of the Conaghan family being on Barmount Station. You won the Alpha Feedlot of the Year in your category. You won the Beef Australia 2024 Most Successful Feedlot. You purchased, renovated, rebranded and relaunched a feedlot software package called Livestock Junction, which Andrew's heading up. And you've almost finished commissioning a major mill upgrade, which Phil and Reg are sort of running point on, doubling the feedlot capacity and also doubling efficiency. So you've had a huge year, but what I want to do before we get to that is I'd like to go back to the start, Lynise, and just get a bit of an understanding for everyone is, how did you and Phil first come together in the family business and sort of where are you all today?
Well, to cut a long story short, Phil grew up on Barmount, attended the local school before heading to boarding school in Yeppoon, and he returned to Barmount and he's been there ever since. My early years were quite different. My dad managed meatworks, took us all over the country, eventually settled in Rocky. I studied primary school teaching and was working at Mount Morgan Central State School when I met Phil. We married in 92 and we made Barmount our home. In the early years, we lived in a donga. It was our only affordable option at the time. And not long after that, I was offered the teaching position at the local school, continued to work there full-time, transitioned to part-time roles until the arrival of our boys. And in that time, Phil continued to work for his dad until Bob retired in 2002. And so Bob's retirement marked the beginning of a three-way partnership between Phil's mum, Rosemary, his brother Sean, and Phil. Phil primarily managed the livestock side of things and Sean the farming side. And during this time, my focus shifted to the feedlot administration, aligning with the arrival of our daughter Tess in 2003. In 2018, the three-way partnership evolved into a two-way partnership between Phil and Sean. And by 2021, this partnership ended and we acquired Sean's share of Barmount. And that transition coincided with the return of our three adult children, Andrew, Regan and Tess.
All at once?
All at once.
Yeah.
Yep.
Now, Tess was at school for a lot of this, wasn't she? But then Reg, or Regan, and Andrew, they were off pursuing their own careers. So what were they doing at the time, Lynise?
Yeah, so Andrew embarked on a IT business management degrees. So he studied in Brisbane, worked for some IT companies there, and Regan studied civil engineering. So he worked for a local engineering firm in Rocky. I always knew that somehow they would be involved. We just weren't sure exactly how. And Tess, she was looking at going off to uni, but we knew that her heart was at home and, she needed to be with the cows.
And she loves it too, doesn't she?
Yeah, she sure does.
Yeah. And so this is the interesting part when I very, very first met you, Lynise, which I think must have been about 5 or plus years ago. And you're really in that state of flux at that stage of, well, eventually you knew that you and Phil would take over the partnership as such, and the kids were all sort of making noise of wanting to come back, and you were really uncertain. But now you're in the position where everyone's back in the business and rowing in the same direction. Now, it's not been easy, don't get me wrong, but you've got there. Can you just sort of describe everyone's role in the business now? Because I know I call you the chief wrangler and the glue that holds the family together, the most important part, but can you sort of just download what everyone does within the business?
Yeah, sure. Everyone's got clear and identifiable roles in the business, and it aligns with each family member's interests and qualifications, I guess.
Well, also skills as well.
And skills, yeah, exactly. So Andrew is our IT and business consultant. So he wears multiple hats. He makes sure that we're compliant with our policy and procedure documentation, payroll, sourcing commodities, locking in contracts, the business, the financial side of things. He has a good broad understanding of that. And he also helps me when I forget my passwords and IT-related issues. He's all over that. So as you said earlier, he oversees the Livestock Junction, the software that we utilise at Barmount, and it's also utilised by numerous feedlots across the country.
Before we duck onto Regan and Tess, so Andrew's remotely based, isn't he? So this is the unique part about your family, which works beautifully, is he's based in Melbourne, isn't he? And so he does all this financial controlling, IT, administration, like as you said, wears all those hats, and he does it remotely most of the time.
He sure does. We do make a point of coming together every 5 or 6 weeks. So Andrew comes on site, and that gives him, a good opportunity to see firsthand what's going on. Work with staff, talk with staff, look at our training, how that's going. But it works really well. He's in Melbourne most of the time and keeping us on track. Regan, he is our civil engineer, so with a love of farming. So he manages the farming operations, and he's also overseeing the mill expansion. So he, looks after the engineering component of that and make sure that everything's compliant.
And that's like doing all the drawings and making sure that everything's built correctly.
Yeah, that's right. So, so he's juggling a few roles there at the moment. And Tess is our livestock, manager. So she manages the livestock team, so a crew of about 5. She ensures that they're doing what they need to do, and she
wrangles the team and all the animals.
She does. She absolutely does. Yeah, she's instrumental in the livestock side of the business.
And so, can you just give me each of their ages, please, Lynise?
Yeah. So Tess is 21, Regan's 27, and Andrew's 30.
So they've got a good spread of ages across there and different skills and areas. And I think that the other thing that we also want to mention is we've now got is it the 5th or 6th generation is young Lane coming back onto the farm as well, your first grandchild, which is Reg's young fella.
Yes. Yeah, he loves time spent on the farm, whether it's in his little John Deere buggy or in Granddad's buggy checking the cows or with his dad on the tractor. He loves it.
You've worked bloody hard to build a profitable, scalable and well-run operation. But now, as your children are finishing their education and starting to take an interest in the family business, you're realising it's time to shift focus. It's no longer just about farm prosperity. It's now about family prosperity. You need to align your family, start preparing the next generation, improve communication and strengthen family relationships. Now, of course, that's easier said than done. And that's why we created the High Performing Families Workshop to guide families through this crucial transition. Want to know more? Head over to www.agricoach.com.au/take action. Now, let's head back to the episode.
At Barmount.
Now, Phil, how would we describe Phil? What's his role? Well, how would he describe it, and then how would you describe it?
Well, I know we're looking at what Phil does, and the kids jokingly said he drives around in his buggy and stops every 5 seconds to answer his phone. But he does a lot more than that. He is the glue that keeps the business side of things going. He just has his head around the marketing of the cattle, the milling side of things. That his knowledge and depth of experience he's like a hurricane, Phil. He just, yeah.
He's a bull at a gate. That's what he is.
He is a bull at a gate.
Yeah. I mean, I think when we did some personality profiling a while ago, we did a communication session, didn't we? And remember, he came out as a commander. I think that was his personality type in that type of test. And if anyone who knows Phil who's listening, pretty much Phil gets an idea in his head and he thinks through it a lot. And then all of a sudden he's like a young pup out of the gates, isn't he? He's just off and running and everyone's got to keep up. And he does. Like, if I look at Phil, there's a humongous amount of knowledge. I mean, for you guys to take on not only a feedlot, but also a farming operation. And this is you guys can run 10,000 head in the feedlot, plus all the farming operations, plus this software package, plus you're building the mill as well. Like, a fair chunk of it's being done by Barmount crew and then bringing in contractors. I mean, all this is in Phil's head. So he's literally got a finger in every pie. And I think the biggest challenge for the family has been pulling some of those fingers out of the pie and then starting to infuse that and hand that over and train the next generation and also the staff.
Yep. That's exactly right.
Now, what's your role, Lynise? And don't be too humble. What's your role in the business?
Well, I do the administrative side, data entry, processing of invoices, all the day-to-day, tending to emails, all of the basic tasks that come with running an office. But I also work closely with the staff. So human resources is probably one of my most cherished roles in the business. We've got a crew of 16 staff that live and work on site. We're unique in that there's no town where we live, so our staff have to live and work on site, and with that comes challenges, but also some wonderful opportunities. And I really enjoy seeing our crew reach their potential, whether that be through, certificates in feedlot operations or leadership training or I work with the human side of things and, running the office.
The thing that really interests me, Lynise, and I don't want to embarrass you, but culture seems to be a really big thing that you focus on. And I know that that's an area that a lot of businesses, and especially from dads and the man side of the business, quite often go, well, that's not as important as getting jobs done. But one thing that I've noticed with you, Lynise, over the years is you're also sharp on all the administration and the financial controlling and all the business stuff, but you're always intensely focused on making sure the team operates well as a team. And the one thing I noticed when I came to the Barmount 75th anniversary last year and got to meet everyone, it's like a family. As you said, you don't have a town to draw from. So it's not like you've got Rockhampton, just down the road or a large town to draw. You've got to attract these people, but you treat them like they're part of the family and educate them and want them to do well. And if someone leaves, you wish them all the best and give them all the skills they can. And you've got a lineup of people essentially wanting to come in, which I think has been a testament to the whole family, but I think especially to you, Lynise, because you focus so much on the culture of the business and it absolutely shines through.
Thanks, Ben. Yeah, it's really important to us to have that tight-knit unit and know that we've equipped our staff with, whatever skills that we can help them with. And then when the day comes that they do leave, that they're going to contribute to the ag industry positively and move on upwards and onwards.
Exactly. And you've got some long-term staff. I mean, you've had some international people come over. Rami, I think, how many years? 16 years he's been with you?
19.
19. So you've got some people from overseas that have come and worked in the business for a long time. So there's a strong family flavour through everything. And community and family has been a really strong driver for the Conaghan family, but also you, Lynise, coming into the family. I know you're actively involved in the school, being a school teacher in Clarks Creek for many years, but also to just the general community. And that came through at the 75th anniversary, how much the Conaghans were involved in back in, was it the 40s, was it?
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah, building the community hall and the school and bringing people in. And there's heavily involved in the community and family, aren't you?
Yeah, very much so. And, it was in the 70s that the school was first established and my parents-in-law were actively involved in seeing the establishment of that and the community hall. And I think coming in as a new bride, I learnt a lot from my parents-in-law and could see how important it was to give back to community, that it wasn't just about working your business, but making contributions to the community as well.
And that pays dividends. Like, I mean, a lot of people see that as an expense, but investments in your family and in the community actually pay dividends far greater sometimes than investing time back in the business.
Yep, exactly.
So we're all different, aren't we? Like, if I look at the Conaghan family, I think from a personality and skill set type, you could not get any different right across the five of you. You're all like chalk and cheese. And I mean, if I look at your situation from an outsider and, within the last 5 years, as you said, you had the partnership, you had all three kids come back into the business, you'd had a grandchild turn up, Tess finished school and started leading the livestock side of the business. And with all those kids being different personalities, different skills, different age groups, I mean, from an outsider's perspective, you've got all the elements of this turning into a complete shit show. But what's actually happened is you guys have actually thrived. And what I want to be clear of, it hasn't been easy and it's not easy. And you haven't been lucky. It's been a lot of hard work, but you've really thrived. Now, back when I first met you, when we were going through this real transition of not knowing, you and Phil could have easily just, I suppose, sold Barmount, put a manager on, kicked it back a couple of gears and just cruised along. But you and Phil sort of put it into fifth gear and put the pedal to the floor and off you've gone. What's motivating you, and I suppose I'd like you to comment on Phil, to keep driving things forward and bite off a lot more, like especially with the feedlot software and this mill expansion? What's making you do that rather than just, you're in your 50s, coast back a few gears and just chill out for a while?
Well, we're motivated by a few things, Ben. I think legacy is one. We're motivated to honour the work of previous generations to ensure that the business continues to thrive for future generations. So that's a big one for us. We all share a passion for the industry. So that's, we love what we do.
That makes a big difference, doesn't it?
Yeah, no, that's right. And we all love a challenge.
Especially Phil.
Yeah, I was just going to say that, especially Phil. Yeah, so we love the challenge of running our own business and having our family do that with us alongside our crew. Yeah, we're motivated to keep going. And the opportunity, we're motivated by the opportunity that we've been given. We've been given the chance to expand our business, to innovate, make progress. And we're extremely grateful for the opportunities that we've been given. We're also motivated by the impact that we could potentially make to community and to our customers. We custom feed cattle as well as feeding our own, and they're a huge motivator as well. We want to do the right thing by them.
It's been a big step. How motivated are the next generation, Andrew, Reg and Tess, to actually drive things forward? Is this coming from you and Phil, or is it coming from the next generation too?
Definitely the next generation too, Ben. We invest a lot of time talking as a family about what is our vision, where do we want to be in the next, 3 years, 5 years, 10 years. And by communicating that vision, it's very clear to Phil and I that our kids are on the same page, that for many of those reasons that I just spoke about that motivates myself and Phil, I could confidently say that that's what also drives the kids.
Because they are all motivated, aren't they? I mean, I look at Tess at 21, what she's doing in the livestock manager's role, male, female, whoever. If you're 21 years of age and you're managing, 16 staff, Reg is in doing the farming and helping as well, but she's still got a significant role in there, hasn't she, to be able to manage that livestock team and the livestock and work with Dad. And then Reg has taken on all the farming operations. So he's now responsible because you guys run centre pivots, you're growing a lot of your own commodities. And then Andrew has taken over Livestock Junction, which we'll get to in a second. But they're all actually not only excited about the future, but they're all grabbing the bull by the horns. There's this can-do attitude rather than a can't. Because there's two sorts of people. There's can-dos and can't-dos, whereas all three of them seem to me to be definitely can-dos. And I see that in Phil again, and I see that in yourself. Does that naturally just come through in the kids, or did you sort of, I suppose you'd say, infuse that in them or promote that in them when they were younger?
Probably a combination of both, Ben. I think as a child you learn from what you see, and the kids would never have seen us say this is too hard or we can't do this. It's about, well, that didn't work. What can we do differently this time? Or I think I can see that same determination, personality type as well. But, when you spoke about the different personality types before, we're all so different, yet we all share that common, determination, can-do attitude. So, I think a lot of it comes from how they've been raised what's the alternative? You give up, well, what then?
Yeah, and it's interesting. I don't ever see this. I never see the I only ever see the we. So in other words, it's not about what can I get out of this, what can we do and how can we help each other get to where we want to go, which is really a hard thing in some families to foster. It's usually, well, this is what I want and this is what I want, not this is what we want. And everyone's motivated on, for example, reducing the pressure on you and Phil and taking on those responsibilities, but also saying, look, we want to learn and we want to know how to do this stuff, but we don't want it tomorrow. We're happy to do the apprenticeship. So I think you've infused a really good way of getting them to think, well, we're almost like stronger together or we're better together rather than rowing just our own boat, which is a rare thing in families. It's got to be created, not just born with.
That's right, Ben. It's also important, though, to listen to what each family member does want to achieve as an individual as well. And that's something that we are mindful of, that each family member has the opportunity to say, this is where we're going as a team, as a family business, but each of our kids have their own, and we do too, have our own goals that we want to hopefully tick off as the years go by.
And like the kids are wanting to build their own wealth outside of the family business. They want to guide. They want to know what the future is going to look like. They want their own autonomy, to be able to manage their own little piece of the pie as they get competent. But I don't want to duck into any specific details, Lynise, in any way, shape or form. But just for everyone listening, it sounds like a unique fairy tale, but it's not always easy, is it? Like there is conflict, there is arguments, there are days that you want to just throw your rattle out of the pram and go home. I mean, it's not always easy peasy, is it?
Gosh, no, nothing's ever easy, but the bad days don't last forever and the good days outweigh the bad. Communication is probably and you hear that all the time, that keep that communication going and you'll eliminate a lot of the stresses and the unknowns and the miscommunication.
And being patient as well with that communication. It doesn't just happen overnight, does it?
No, that's right.
So I think it was about 3 years ago, Lynise, we actually sat in the room as a family and started to have these conversations and create a roadmap. So that was really a really interesting stage for I say the kids, but I mean, geez, they're not young adults. But the kids, the next generation, sat in the room and to start with, there's a lot of blank stares, isn't there? It's like, well, where do we want to go? What do we want to do? And it's like, oh, we haven't thought about that. And we went through that whole process. And the thing with it is, Lynise, is most families, communication and trust is one of the key issues. So how do we communicate well? How do we build trust? How do we stop trust eroding? Because I think that's about 60% of the reason successions fail. But another reason is preparation of heirs or the next generation, and also having all being aligned to the one plan. Now, when you took over fully of Barmount, that's a pretty pressured time in the sense that, you and Phil are now responsible, kids are coming back in. You managed to wrangle everyone together and get the family to agree to invest time, money, and effort into actually getting aligned, learning the skills, coming up with a roadmap or a strategic plan, bringing the professional advisors along on the journey, your bank manager, accountant, and then regularly having family meetings and discussing these things and learning. Now, for most families, the usual response is, we don't have enough bloody time, Ben. We've got enough stuff. What made you, Lynise, invest the time and energy in that stuff rather than just going out and working harder and harder in the business? And how the bloody hell did you get Phil on board?
I guess it was easy to see the value of early engagement. The sooner that we got everyone engaged and to see where we were all at, were we on the same page, where were we heading, that probably made that easier to get things over the line, to have us all in the same room and, look at where we were heading in the future. Getting together early in the piece meant that we had a better chance of sustaining our legacy. By getting in early helped us to work out, is this actually what we all want to do? It also, I think, helped us create a stronger bond.
And that's important because if you don't have a strong family bond, I mean, that's a big reason why families break down, isn't it?
That's right. And we certainly didn't want to see that happen with our family. So we knew that by getting together as a family early in the piece was going to strengthen that trust, that everyone could actually say what they were thinking, or that there was going to be a safe place for them to talk about their ideas and not get shot down. Yeah, and I think Phil was reluctant at the start because, sitting in a room together for a couple of days, I guess it seemed that there could be a lot more things getting done. But even now he will say that that would be one of the best things that we've ever done. You can't make assumptions about what your kids are thinking or what they want or where they want to be. You actually have to sit down in the room and make sure that you are aligned with your values and your vision for the future and where we all want to be down the track.
Because the interesting part was a lot's evolved since then, hasn't it? Like if you look at where you were with the kids at that stage, and Tess would have been, 21, she'd have just been sort of 18, I suppose you'd say, at that stage, and Andrew's a bit younger. Like the business evolved substantially over that time, and the kids or the next generation have grown through, and we've seen the software package all of a sudden come up as just this little seed of a thought. I still remember the day when Andrew came into the meeting and he said, we've got this software package that Barmount's been using for years. It's this little seed of an idea I've got to build this package. And he just sort of laid it on the table, and everyone looked at it and went, we're in the feedlot business and we grow grain and cattle, and what are we doing with software? And now, lo and behold, 3 years later, young Andrew's with Tess and Reg's help, and you're on Phil's and Outsiders. It's now got employees. It's got feedlots across Australia. It's actually now a legitimate startup business, I suppose you'd say. And you can see Reg coming through now with his ideas around using drones in the bunkers and technology. And then, this mill expansion is a big thing. Like there's been a lot changed over that time. And I suppose one meeting or one strategic planning meeting where we all get aligned just doesn't work. It's got to be this ongoing process. Have you found that consistently as a family meeting and practicing communication when things get difficult, strategically planning and then having open discussions has helped strengthen the business and family relationships?
Oh, 100%. It's easy to think that, we'll have that first meeting and we'll be right and take it up from there. But the reality is we'll get too tied up in what we're doing, or no, let's reschedule that meeting. By having these regular meetings keeps us in check, and it makes sure that any, issues that could potentially fester don't, that we talk about, communication between, Tess and Phil. They're so much alike in so many ways. Having those meetings make sure that each person is heard, that they have different ways of communicating, often the same idea, but we've come to learn that listening to those different viewpoints and opinions, and that just because something was done one way years ago doesn't mean that it has to continue that way, that there's new and fresh ideas that can be brought to the table. That happens in these regular meetings. I don't think it would if we were left to our own devices and just plodded along day by day. It's really important to schedule in those regular meetings and communicate. And
also too, having that meeting as well with your professional advisors. So you've got a great relationship with your bank manager, your accountant, and you have regular meetings with the bank manager and accountant around finance and budgets and all those sorts of things, as a lot of people do. But then once a year, we get in a room with the accountants, the bank manager and the family, where Reg, Andrew and Tess can sit in the room and then have these meetings where we not only discuss or get them to experience and see how this works and get them to build a relationship with the professional advisors, which has happened brilliantly with Andrew especially, but also too for the bank manager and the accountant to be able to see the family working together and get a clear understanding of the family. The first one's always clunky, but the next one's better and the one after that's better. How have you and Phil found it having everyone in that room at least once a year to be able to strategically talk about the business and have the next generation in there?
Oh, it's great. Yeah, I think when we first transitioned, there was some hesitation, how much information do you expose the kids to? But essentially, as you said earlier, they're in their apprenticeship phase, so they need to know, what the budget looks like. They need to have input into, infrastructure that might need replacing, revamping. So it really makes them feel like they are instrumental to the business planning, and also that they can see, how important it is to budget and look at trends with the cattle, that we are going to go through periods where it's going to be tough. Yeah, looking at historical trends. And it's just, I can't recommend it enough. It's great that they are all in the same room and we're all on the same page heading in the same direction.
Because one of the mistakes I see families make, Lynise, is that within a family, let's say there's 3 kids, one of them will have a natural proclivity to sort of wanting to do the financial controlling, and someone might be the farming operations. But as part of the apprenticeship phase, and for me, the apprenticeship phase is somewhere between 0 when they hit the ground and around 30. That's roughly the apprenticeship phase, that you want them to be exposed to all those areas, because a big mistake families will make, they'll say, oh, my son or daughter, they don't like any of that office stuff and the financial controlling, and they don't understand it. And so we're just going to teach them how to manage the cattle or grow the crops. But eventually they're going to have to know how to do that stuff. And we want to start that journey earlier on. And we also want the bank and the accountants to start then involving that next generation in and helping them build their wealth and get involved in that side of things, because from a lending point of view, the bank manager being able to go back to their credit analyst or their credit manager and say, hey, the whole team's involved. We've done a family meeting. The kids understand the value of money, and they're not just going to come in and spend money willy-nilly. They understand. This helps them go through that journey, and also doesn't eliminate, but it substantially reduces entitlement, doesn't it? Because I see families all the time that are petrified about showing their kids their balance sheet or their profit and loss. And I'm like, well, if you involve them in the process so that they're intimately involved, know what's involved, if there's $10 million on the balance sheet or $100 million on the balance sheet or profit, it all becomes normalized after a period of time and put into context, which I think has been one of the real valuable part for you guys, is every one of those, the next generation, understands the money now on a basic level and where money's flowing and the importance of doing their job and doing it well, and that money just doesn't come in. It has to be earned and then looked after. There has to be a responsible management of money.
100%. Yep, that's exactly right.
Yeah. So Lynise, with Livestock Junction, I mentioned on that before, just to give the Conaghan family a bit of a plug on this, just talk me through what Livestock Junction is really quickly and what the vision is for the future.
Well, it's a livestock management software package, but it is tailored to feedlots, but not necessarily confined to feedlot operations. So we use the software on our feedlot. So, it monitors your animal health. We actually use the software to drive staff meetings every week. So from the software, we can draw information about loading variances for our feeding team, feeding time accuracy, our commodity stock takes, how effective our crew have been in recovery of sick animals.
Audit as well.
Yeah, audit. So compliance, staff training is a big thing for us. As I said, we draw a lot of data out of the software to drive continued improved performance. I use it to generate the invoices for our custom cattle. And the good thing about it is that Andrew talks to business owners and to determine exactly what they need to better run their business. So he has a programmer employed that does work with him. So he's able to tailor the software to suit individual enterprises. And he's also got another employee that goes on site with him and helps with IT support. So if anyone's stuck or has any issues, there's help, at the end of a phone straight away.
I should be asking Andrew because this is his baby, so I probably put you on the spot, everyone. This is Lynise is probably sitting there thinking, what the hell are you asking me this question for? That's Andrew's field. But what I want to just say, Lynise, is that the software package you've been using for donkey's years, and now Andrew is essentially working with Tess and Reg and you guys and many other feedlots to actually improve it and put it on, I suppose you'd say, rocket fuel to get it to do better and better and better stuff. And ultimately, it's been rolled out across Australia. So if anyone's looking for feedlot management software, this is the place you want to go. Andrew's got some big goals to be kicked there. So, Lynise, I'm going to make it a little bit easier for you now, rather than asking you what a software package done and how it all intimately works. But, with young Lane coming back on, we did say, was it 5th or 6th generation? Was Laney?
5th generation.
Fifth. So 10 years from now, Lynise, that'll make Phil in his 60s. We won't say it about anyone else, but that'll make Phil in his early 60s. 10 years from now, can you paint me a picture of what an unbelievable outcome would look like for you and Phil?
Yeah, well, we would want to see a thriving, sustainable business. We want to see that the business has grown and evolved while maintaining the core values that defines us.
It's really important.
We want to make sure that the business has stayed on top of adaptations to industry, that we're at the forefront of innovation and new ideas. We want to see that we're financially stable, that we have a clear succession plan in place so that it's positioned for our future generations. We want to continue to be strong, have strong family relationships. In 10 years' time, I hope that we are still having Christmas dinners together and going on the odd holiday.
That's the universal measure, isn't it? Everyone I speak to is like Christmas dinners, but also I think family holidays are a great measure as well, Lynise, which I know is big on the agenda for Barmount to make sure we do have regular fun together.
Yeah, no, that's true. We want to, in 10 years' time, I hope that there's work-life balance, that Phil and I are winding back and starting to take some little mini vacations. And
not just to horse sales or horse shows.
Yeah, that's right. That's right. I hope you're listening, Phil. That the next generation, that Lane, continues to be immersed in that he can see what we're doing, and, that he develops a love for Barmount just as we all have. I hope that in 10 years' time that we continue to have a positive impact on our community and our crew, and I hope that the legacy continues to thrive.
Be lovely, wouldn't it? And I'm guessing you don't want Phil to retire full-time, because Phil under your feet would be like one of those collie pups that he's training, running around the place causing havoc with everyone, wouldn't he?
Yeah, no, he needs to be busy, and horses will always be a big part of his life, and I look forward to seeing him continue to thrive in that area, but hopefully we can throw in a few other bits and pieces as well, that we have got that work-life balance. Yeah, I hope in 10 years that the kids are transitioning, that they will have surpassed the apprenticeship role by then and really getting their teeth into the business operations and management side of things.
And you can really see that already, Lynise. I mean, I talk to people about that apprenticeship phase, as I mentioned before, about 28 to 32 is roughly where, especially young men, need to be bolted into some solid responsibility. Girls grow up a bit earlier than us men do. We seem to take a bit longer, but I can really see that within the family. And I have to give Phil his credit, to start with, it was like, we've got lots to do here. I've just got to hold on with white knuckles. But I've noticed over time that as each of the next generation have stepped up and sort of taken responsibility, and, there's been a bit argy-bargy. There always is. I mean, that's normal. But Phil's sort of allowing them to do those things and giving them responsibility once trust has been built, and it takes a while to build trust. And so I can see a vision in the future as Phil lowers his, not necessarily workload, but responsibility, so that you and Phil can get that freedom, which you're already starting to feel, aren't you? Like there's a little bit of that freedom, not just going to horse sales or to camp drafts, but there's that little bit of freedom to be able to get away. I mean, you went away on the weekend and the team looked after the feedlot. And I would see that in 10 years' time, if you guys could have the freedom to come and go and be financially independent of the business, which obviously that's a strategic plan, that'll be a great situation. And I can tell you, talking with Tess, Reg, and also Andrew, that's their goal. Like they have the same goal. They keep saying to me off on the side is, that we want to do well ourselves. We want to achieve and succeed, etc. But we also want mum and dad to slow down a bit, have some time away. And I know they've all advocated for you and Phil lowering the pressure from time to time, which is beautiful to see, Lynise. And I think that's come from you, definitely, within the family, promoting not only the wealth and the wisdom, but also the wellness of the family, making sure that, mentally we're strong, relationships are strong, and physically we're also looking after ourselves, which I think is an amazing thing, Lynise.
Yeah, no, that's right. Thank you.
Now, Lynise, if I gave you the microphone, so to speak now, and said you could talk to all the families out there that are in their, let's just say their late 40s to late 50s, and they've got the next generation coming through, imagine you had them sitting in a room all listening to you. What's a bit of advice that you give them right now?
I would say to set clear expectations early, ensure that each family member has a defined role and responsibility so they know that there's no misunderstandings. I would say make sure that you foster open communication. That's essential. Schedule regular meetings to discuss your goals, your progress. I think that's really important. We can get bogged down in that was a terrible day or that was a shocking week, but taking the time to look at, well, what have we actually achieved in the last 6 weeks is a really good thing. And also to talk about any challenges so they're, nipped in the bud in a timely manner. I would encourage open dialogue between all family members, make sure that everyone has a voice and that everyone feels comfortable in sharing their ideas without fear of, being shot down. Essentially, I think the next gen don't really want to be taking over. It's not their mission to kick you off the place. They just want to have a say and to feel heard going forward. And I think, fostering that open communication is super important. And the earlier you do that, the better. communicate your vision to your kids so they can see what your vision is, and then it's for them to decide whether that aligns with where they're heading or not. They might contribute to, changing that vision somewhat, make it even better, broaden it, with the livestock junction. So listening to the vision and sharing the vision early on, respecting the skill set that your kids bring to the table and doing what you can to develop those skills further, whether it be off-farm, conferences, workshops, just try to enable any opportunity to upskill the next gen. Leadership is one area that's super important. Not everyone is confident to deal with
conflict or dealing with staff
Exactly, yeah. So any opportunities that enable them to upskill and gain confidence and an understanding of how different personality types work. And I would also say to gradually integrate the next gen into the business, encourage them to get a comprehensive understanding of the entire business. Don't hide anything from them. Let them see how it is, the good, the bad and the ugly. And, the education on the financial side as well. Just because one of your kids might be super confident and skilled with the cattle, they need exposure to all aspects of the business so that it's not just left to one member of the family to have that responsibility. That's probably it in a nutshell.
Gee, that's a lot of good advice, Lynise. The other two things I just had in there listening to you is one thing I've seen you guys is forgiveness. I think a lot of families forget that when the next generation's coming in. Probably this is more of my point, guys, is they'll say the wrong thing. They won't express themselves properly. They might be a bit of bull at the gate. They might be a little bit arrogant. 22-year-old Ben is completely different to 47-year-old Ben. And I think in families, if you can forgive, and it's the older generation, the younger generation, we have to have that level of forgiveness to be able to go, look, we're all learning here. Mum and dad, the current generation don't know how to do this, and they probably had a terrible one with their parents. I know you guys didn't, but a lot of families do. So forgiveness for mum and dad that they might not get it right, but also forgiveness for the next generation. They don't know everything. They're learning. And if you think back to when you were that age, I know when I was Tessa's age or Reg's age, I made a lot of mistakes. And I look back now and go, geez, some of the things I said were probably way out of line. And so forgiving and then moving on is a really important point. And I've seen you guys practice that, when there's been that things haven't quite gone perfectly, to be able to sort of move on fairly quickly and not hold those grudges.
Absolutely. That's a really good point. And allow them to learn from their mistakes. I think, originally we were worried about leaving the feedlot and leaving the kids in charge. And things will go wrong and they do go wrong, but that's okay, because if they didn't go wrong, how are they going to learn how to deal with those situations going forward? So letting them make mistakes, but learning from those mistakes in a supportive environment is super important. And also celebrating the return of your kids, I think, is a good piece of advice too. It's, not all of them are going to come home, but celebrate the ones that do decide to come back and want to be part of the business. It's super exciting.
Yeah, I agree. And look, what is it I heard someone say once, Lynise? Responsibility for the next generation without permission to make mistakes is a terrible burden.
Mm.
And I see it all the time. I remember I had a conversation once with a young fellow who I thought was a rock star. He was 21. He was really, really good, really diligent, really conscientious. And he had all the makings to be an incredible producer and also young man. And his parents were so hard on him. And I remember sitting down having a cup of coffee with him a number of years ago. And just to clarify, Lynise, this wasn't one of your boys, but sitting down, and he cried. And he just said, I can't handle the pressure. Every little mistake I make, mum, it was in this case mum and dad, more mum, come down on me. And the parents did it out of what they thought love, because they're going, we need to make sure he's, we've got high expectations, we need things to happen. But he just couldn't make any mistakes, and it was horrible. And then he ended up leaving the farm and saying, I don't want to come back because of that. So I think the ability to let that next generation make some mistakes, obviously within reason, and they have to learn from those mistakes, but can be really valuable lesson. Because I know some of the things that I've learnt in my career that have stuck with me have been incredibly painful when they happen, but they produced amazing results later in my life. So, I think that's a really good one, Lynise. So, look, that's been fantastic, Lynise. You guys have got a wonderful story. As I've said many times, it's not always been easy. We've just talked about the highlight reels. There's been a lot of hard work, but I can absolutely say to everyone listening that Lynise and Phil and the whole family have this strength of family relationships is just as important as financial strength, and they live and do that every day. So I just want to say thank you. I know this has been a big step for you, Lynise, to come on here and talk today. So I'm super appreciative. And yeah, I've got a huge amount of notes here. So hopefully everyone else has got as much value as I have.
Thanks, Ben.
Well, that wraps up another cracker of an episode. It's taken me a bit of time to get Lynise on here, but it was well worth it. Lynise is a cracker of a person, and they are a lovely family going in to achieve a lot over the next 10 to 20 years. Now, there's a couple of things I just want to pop in here before we finish up today. The first one is Lynise, once we hung up, told me I'd made a mistake, and Phil does not do camp drafting. He's a cutting man. And apparently, if I get that wrong, I'm in a whole lot of strife. So Phil, if you listen to this, sorry, mate. As soon as I said it, I remembered and then it went to the wayside. So yeah, just to clarify that. Secondly, I just want to touch on a couple of things that we sort of went through at the end, just to reconfirm this. The first thing is, if you are bringing the next generation in, start as early as you can. Start having those conversations. If your kids are in their late teens, early 20s, then's the time you want to start having those discussions about the future. Now, you might not get much feedback from them. You might not get much traction, and families always think, I don't want to put too much pressure on them. But if you start having those discussions early, it's always a fantastic building block for a good foundation, even if they don't want to come back to the farm. Secondly, get a roadmap and share that roadmap with the family. So work out where the bloody hell you're going over the next 10 years. If you're in your 50s, you're in your early 50s, within 10 years, you should have a very clear plan of what's next. Get that together, get the input from the next generation, and then chart them out a clear path. The next thing is family meetings. You need to be having regular family meetings. I can't stress that enough. Now, the one key tip from me is you've got to try and stay away from operational. What happens for families is they spend all their time in operational and they don't start talking about the good stuff, the strategic stuff, the communication. It's all the stuff that's hard but needs to be talked about. So if you are going to have family meetings, don't do a cop out and just talk about operational. Make sure you start talking about the tough stuff. And if you can't do those family meetings or you're having problems, get a facilitator in, get someone to come and help you run those meetings, at least until you get up and running. That's really important to do that. Another thing I just had written down here to note is Lynise mentioned here was you've got to celebrate the wins, but also talk about the challenges, because quite often challenges can lead to wins. And if there are communication issues, there are any personality problems, etc., between people in the family, you've got to start having those conversations. Now, when you start having family meetings and you talk about these things, you're not necessarily going to get a resolution, and things aren't going to get better just because you had one or two conversations. It's something that you've got to continually have and practice those communication skills. And most families need to go outside the family to get those skills to know how to do it. So that's understanding. And also too, just make sure the drama triangle doesn't appear. Now, I'm going to talk about this in a podcast or a blog soon, but essentially what we see in a lot of families is when you'll have, let's say, mum, dad, and a son, or mum, dad, and a daughter, or something like that, or two kids and dad. What we don't want to see in, say, the mum, dad, and son or daughter is the son or daughter coming back and bitching about dad to mum and dad, and then the husband coming back and bitching to mum and dad and having a conversation about that. We want to talk directly to the people. Now, that might be really, really hard. And if you've got a dad or a mum that aren't great at communication, or you've got kids, for the younger generation, work on yourself, learn how to communicate them better, but don't create the drama triangle where nobody talks to anyone, and mum, quite often in the case, becomes the center of all that because they want to reduce the family friction. So make sure you talk directly to the person involved. Now, guys, there was a million things in there from Lynise. Just go back and have a listen. And whatever you do is, if you think another family out there would love to become a high-performing family or succeed intergenerationally, Lynise and Phil's story and the whole Conaghan family is a great story. So make sure you share it with your family and friends. If you enjoyed it, get it out there. It not only helps us share the wealth and wisdom, but it also helps people out there. We get lots of feedback from people saying, wow, we were glad we got to hear that little bit of information and we shared it with our friends. That's the best thank you can give us. And also, make sure if you've got your phone and you're using Spotify or Apple Podcasts, make sure you give us if you think it's valuable, a 5-star rating or a comment. That really, really helps. And share it on social social media. Make sure you share it if you think it's valuable. Again, that's the only way we're going to get this out. We're trying to tackle this problem and create high-performing families who have strong financial positions, but also strong family relationships. And I can't do that without your help. I'm only one man and my team. We can't do that. So make sure you share it. Now, that's it for this time. If you've got any questions or you want to share anything, admin@thefinancialbloke.com.au. I'll see you in 2 weeks' time.